Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Harris School of Public Policy Admitted Virtual Student Week. We're so happy to have you on Wednesday, April 1st. This is our current student panel where we'll be discussing kind of the life of a Harris student and any other questions you all may have. Before we go ahead and kind of jump in to the panel, I do want to provide you with a couple reminders. The first one, please remember to not enable your video or unmute yourselves. And second, if you have any questions, please direct them to the Harris admissions chat only. Do that in the private section as well. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, so my name is Rihanna Coleman. I'm the student recruitment specialist here at UChicago. I'm sure I've talked to many of you all as you are going through the application process, and I'm sure I probably did some admit calls as well, so those are always fun. We're joined today by three panelists. They are all first-year students, Sabrina, Jordyn, and Nora. And I guess that will take me to my first question. So panelists, can you all please introduce yourselves? Let us know your hometown and policy interests.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Vega. I am a first-year MPP. I am from Frederick, Maryland, and my main policy interests are environmental and energy policy and social policy.
I'm Jordyn Graham. I'm a first-year MPP student. I'm from Evanston, Illinois, so just north of Chicago. And my interests are also energy and environmental policy and also municipal policy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nora McConnell Johnson. I'm also a first-year MPP. I am originally from the Twin Cities, Minnesota, but I spent the last 7 years teaching middle school reading in New Orleans. And so my policy interest is kids and families, especially kids and families who live in poverty.
Awesome, thank you all. So the next question here is, you all briefly kind of mentioned this, but can you go a little bit more in depth about what you were doing before you came to Harris?
Sure, this is Sabrina. So I was working on Capitol Hill for my Maryland senator as an assistant, and I'd been working in the DC area for some time, and I also went to undergrad in the DC area. So I got a lot of nice DC political policy experience and then decided to come to policy school here in Chicago.
Sorry about that. So this is Jordyn. I was working as a journalist, a newspaper journalist out in Orange County, California for about 6.5 years. I was covering municipal policy, county government, congressional politics, and a lot of watchdog reporting, and basically got to see policy from the side of somebody who was addressing a lot of the problems and kind of the downstream effects of it, and really wanted to learn more basically about how to design policy on the front end, and also became very concerned with climate change and wanted to learn about the energy sector and decarbonization. So decided to come to Harris.
And this is Nora. I was teaching middle school. I was Teach for America. I was a 2012 Corps member in New Orleans. And I was placed at a really amazing school. And so I really loved my school and teaching. So I stayed for a lot longer than I initially planned. But while I was in New Orleans, I did a little bit of policy work. I worked for a school board member. I helped my network, my charter school network, create a lot of policies that were more teacher-facing policies. But then ultimately, I wanted to get into policy school and out of the classroom because I was seeing a lot of factors that were influencing my students' lives that were just outside of my control as a classroom teacher, but were under the scope of policy. So I ultimately came to policy school to think more about those things and work in those spaces.
Great, thank you all. I know prior to coming to Harris, and I was, searching for employment after I did AmeriCorps. I'm a 3-year AmeriCorps alum. Some of the things you all mentioned that attracted you to Harris also attracted me to Harris as a staff member. I really liked that they were very dedicated to providing I would say, kind of the basic foundation for studying and evaluating policy, regardless of what side of policy you were on. They wanted to make sure you had a strong foundation. So that also sounds like, that was a main driving factor for you all as well. So kind of moving into the next question here, can you all talk a little bit more about why you chose to study policy at Harris versus maybe attending another institution or even, working a couple more years?
Sure. So this is Sabrina. So from my perspective, working on the Hill, I saw that how policies are made like at a top level in politics is kind of just like they're written, but they're really politicians are told what to do from like organizations who really research and know their policy well. So I didn't love that all I was doing on the Hill was assisting in writing the policies and not really knowing what was going into them. So I thought that the most valuable part of Harris, in comparison to other schools I was considering in the DC area, was that it has the quant focus on policy and it's kind of data-driven policy, because I think that's really important. I was just kind of disheartened by writing all these policies on the Hill, and then me and all the other staff members kind of being like, oh yeah, well, like, we don't necessarily know exactly why it's this way. Like, we're not the most knowledgeable on that topic. So I really wanted to be on the other side of it and be the most knowledgeable on a specific topic and be able to really understand why we're making policies the way that we are. So that's why I chose Harris in comparison to a lot of other programs.
Similar answer in that as a journalist, it was a lot of times there's kind of a qualitative analysis of what was going on and trying to figure out, there were numbers involved. You try to figure out, okay, what's the size of this impact? But a lot of times you couldn't really draw kind of direct correlation yourself. You would be reliant on other people to draw those connections for you. And the idea of really kind of using data to inform the decisions that we make, I found to be very interesting. Even as a journalist, there are data journalists who are, using these large data sets to basically do their own investigations and to draw their own conclusions from them. And even as a journalist, I always wanted to have that skill set. So the notion that you would go into policy and not have this background and not have this understanding about how to leverage data to make these decisions seems absurd. Not that it's the only consideration that goes in there, but if you don't have that piece of the puzzle, like, what is it that you're doing? And so I wanted to make sure that I had these hard skills because I think that for my time in the working world, it was more difficult to go back and get those hard skills than it was to kind of gain soft skills on the job or gain, a deeper understanding of, say, the political forces or the constituency forces. And so I thought that the hard skills was really what I wanted to go to school for. And, I don't think that I couldn't find a program that did it better than UChicago. I'll say two other quick things really quickly, which is, the other two reasons why I chose UChicago was, one, to leverage the whole school. I was really interested in taking classes at Booth, at the law school, having the Institute of Politics right down the street, and being able to see David Axelrod speak. I thought that, compared to some of the other programs that I considered, being able to kind of have this great university to be able to take advantage of all of that was really important. And then the last was kind of the location in Chicago, not only because I'm from Chicago, but because of the opportunities that the city provides, the speakers that UChicago and Harris get to come in just because, they work in the city and they're able to pop in for an afternoon. There's a lot of speakers on campus all the time. And then also makes it really easy to network, both in the city that I inevitably want to find out, or that I want to end up in, but also just in terms of, similarly to have the speakers come on campus, they're just an arm's length away. So it's really easy to pop downtown and grab lunch with somebody to do, a networking lunch with someone who's in your field, and other programs that might not be as easy if you are not by a city. So.
And this is Nora. I am going to echo a lot of what Jordyn and Sabrina already said, so I can keep it shorter. But I similarly was really interested in having more of a quantitative focus in my research and in my work. I don't have a very quantitative background, and my time in New Orleans really illustrated for me the power of just money and how important it is to be in the rooms where the budgets are being set and be influencing who is being allocated what amounts. And I really wanted to be able to come out of this saying, I know numbers, I know how to do this, let me do it. And so I came to Harris mostly because I knew that it was going to give me a really rigorous quantitative foundation. I looked at a few other schools that really had good reputations, and they felt more like business school vibe compared to what I was seeing when I came to Harris for Admitted Students Day. I care a lot about rigor, and I care a lot about academic foundation. And I knew that I was going to get that at a place like UChicago. And then similar to what Jordyn said, I wanted to be in a city that was going to allow me to like get a lot of experiences, get a lot of at-bats with these sort of issues that I really care about, and like be in a place where important conversations are happening. And Chicago has been that. It's been so cool to be in Chicago and like see how respected and just like honestly, yeah, respected Harris is. People really are excited when they hear you're from Harris or when they hear you're from U Chicago, which has been a really nice benefit of coming to Harris.
Great, thank you so much. So you all had kind of touched on the fact that you were looking to join an institution that had credibility, but also had rigor and gave you the solid foundation to study math, even if you didn't have a quantitative background. So with that being said, can you briefly describe your experience with the core? And did you have a favorite class or a favorite professor? And if so, why?
Sure, this is Sabrina. So my favorite core class and kind of experience in the core was Micro 1. I had it with Thomas Coleman, and he's such a sweet person and professor. And I really enjoyed like my private meetings with him. I think professors are typically very accessible, especially in the core. They have office hours. So I met with him one-on-one a few times. And I just really enjoyed that class because, like I said before, I came to Chicago for the quantitative background. And like Nora said, I also came in with no background in quant. So I found it really exciting to get started with all of that. And I think Micro 1 was a really great introduction to kind of almost everything else that we do at Harris. So I really enjoyed my time getting to know him and also getting to know the TAs in that class. I think the TAs are a great part of the core classes. They're mostly second years who have done the same thing the year before. And I really found some great TAs that helped me through it and helped me really understand these really important skills to have.
Jordyn here. The course been very good. It's really a crash course and moves so quickly. You're really getting the solid foundation to kind of gain these skills that you're going to apply down the road in your other classes. And I can't think of a course that did that more for me than statistics for data analysis 2 with Austin Wright. By far my favorite course. I never thought I would be somebody who enjoyed a statistics course. And I just can't tell you how rewarding it was to be able to kind of walk through slowly why you need to have a solid foundation in statistics to understand how data analysis is done, so that if you're going to look at, say, a study or a pilot program, and it's something that you may want to expand to do on a larger scale or to kind of adapt into a policy because you see results that you like, to be able to understand kind of, how to look for correlation, causation, to understand how, these studies were conducted, and to make sure that they actually have a solid foundation in statistics, and that, they're not providing biased results in some way. And so in that class, we really learned how to run regression analyses, and then not only run regression analyses, but understand the statistics behind them, so that we were able to spot flaws in different studies that we might read down the line. And so, that's what I fundamentally came to school for, was to be able to understand how to read data and how to read, how to leverage data to make policy. And I think that class, more than any other one, provided that foundation.
This is Nora. My experience with the core, I did not love it, but I definitely appreciated it. I knew that it was going to be challenging. My first quarter, the micro midterm, so like one of the first tests we had to take, I just bombed. I was like in the lowest 20th percentile. Like it just sucked, and it's not what I'm used to. And so that was a moment that I was like, oh, I really hate this. But I feel like Harris is such a good place for somebody like me, because if you want resources to help, that they're there. So I got tutoring, like Sabrina said. There's a few econ TAs who are just so good and helpful. So that was a really helpful part of it. And I just honestly worked my butt off and kept going. And I would never think that I was going to say that micro was my favorite class of anything, but I really loved microeconomics, especially the second quarter. I had a professor named Arda Gitmez who I really appreciated that he taught us the material the way that it was intended to be taught, but then he would also editorialize and really talk about it from his own experience and how he would see these sort of high level thoughts play out in the real world. And I didn't really realize how much of my life had been connected to microeconomics, but it really helped me see the connections in my real life and how to apply them and where they might go in the future. And I just really appreciated that part of the core. So it ended up being good.
Great, thank you so much. A lot of what you all are saying, I also hear from many first years and also second years, like, oh, this wasn't what I was expecting, or it was hard, but gosh, I'm so glad I did it. I gained so many useful skills, useful tips, just for, their own personal gain, but also their professional gain. So I think that is very important when a university can offer so many different benefits. Moving into our other question here, you all are very close to finishing up the course, so yay, congratulations. As you continue to move through your academic coursework, have you all been thinking about internships? Have you already secured an internship? And if so, what did that process look like? And do you have any advice for those who are maybe not sure what they should do for an internship?
Sure. So this is Sabrina. Um, Very excited to be done with the core, and I definitely gained a lot of skills that I am now able to talk about in interviews and in cover letters. I have not yet secured anything for the summer. I'm currently deep in that process of trying to find something. But I will say some of the best advice I got very recently from Melissa Navas, who's actually the career development person at the IOP, the Institute of Politics, and is a Harris alum as well. She's fantastic. And I'd kind of been worried about my internship this whole year and what I'm going to do and how that's going to shape my future career. And the best advice that she gave me recently was just like, this summer is not what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Like, yes, the skills that you gain are going to be important, but especially if you have a bit of job experience prior to coming to Harris, you're going to just build on your professional skills and also be able to like better direct that to find what you want to do coming out of Harris. Like, it doesn't have to directly relate, which has really helped me open up what I'm looking at. Because I originally came in saying I don't want any more government experience in the near future because that's all I have. So I was looking at private sector, nonprofits, and I was finding it really hard to translate my skills well to that. So I've started opening up and really looking more at Chicago government because she pointed out a unique thing to me, which is that I've never worked in the Chicago area either. So that's also just completely new. So no matter what I do, I'm going to be gaining new skills and a new network. So I'm trying to put less pressure on exactly what I'm going to do this summer and just find a great experience that I'll be able to learn something from. And I think a lot of jobs that Harris CDO sends out to us, the Career Development Office, and the IOP have are really great ways to start finding those. So that's where I'm looking.
Hey, this is Jordan. So I am also still looking for an internship. Waiting about 7 or 8 applications that I have out. I think that COVID has kind of delayed the process of deciding for some of that. So I think a lot of students are in this place right now where they're still waiting kind of to hear back from some positions. But I think it's also fine. A lot of the second years, so I talked to said that they didn't line their internship up until late April. And so I know every student kind of panics about this, kind of from the second that they land at Harris, what am I going to do next summer? And there are basically so many opportunities that I think, to stay calm is a good piece of advice. That said, I would advise kind of getting everything in order pretty early. And I say this just because there are some opportunities that start a little bit earlier if you're interested in consulting and doing an internship that over the summer. They start doing recruiting in the second week of school in early October. And so even if you're on campus for math camp, I'd recommend kind of taking advantage of the career development office and going in there and having someone look over your resume and having someone, look over a cover letter and, even potentially doing, a mock interview or they kind of do like an elevator pitch thing where you have a short amount of time to talk about yourself and kind of condense your story into, a few sentences that are most impressive. And I'd say really take advantage of that sort of thing, because even if you have, I'm somebody who has, 8 years of professional experience, what I don't have is experience in kind of pitching my story and condensing it in a way that is, puts my best foot forward and does it in a really short period of time. And so I'd say take advantage of CDO early on and make sure that, especially before the quarter starts, if you can, because when that quarter starts, really focused on, your microeconomics courses, your statistics classes. I would say, just don't stress it, but at the same time, kind of get what you can in order early on, and just take advantage of the resources that Harris has to offer.
Hi, this is Nora. Something exciting is that I just nailed down an internship yesterday. So I have been working really hard to figure out where I would want to fit in this summer. And I found this guy who works at Harris, whose name is Mike Belsky, who's super helpful and connected. And he basically worked with me to connect me with a bunch of people in Chicago who I could find my way through talking to and figuring out kind of where I wanted to work. So I talked to some people at the city level, in the mayor's office, some people who are aldermans. And I eventually found my way to Chicago public schools. And my approach was to actually just kind of tell people, Harris has this really great ability to fund unpaid summer internships. And so I was basically hi, I want to work for you this summer and I can get the funding myself. And so that was the way that I secured this most recent internship that I found, which is at the Chicago Public Schools Office of Equity. So I have to apply for the funding still, and Harris is has a great fund to make sure, and also the Institute of Politics, which Sabrina shouted out, has a really good fund to make sure that students who find internships that are unpaid can have some sort of financial support this summer. But that is my plan for the summer right now. And I am hoping that with all of this COVID mess that I can still do some sort of good work, but I'm just trying to be flexible and understand what's going on with that.
Great, thank you. So moving to our next question here. You all talked a lot about getting involved, with your internships, and Sabrina, you discussed Melissa, and Nora, you kind of discussed Mike Belsky. How else are you all kind of involved in the community? It sounds like that's how you all were able to learn more about internships and even secure internships. So can you briefly talk about if you're involved with any HSOs or if you do any volunteering in the community? How were you kind of able to get acquainted with the city of Chicago?
Sure, this is Sabrina. So hopefully you will get a link to this momentarily, but I actually did a blog post on how I built my community here at Chicago. And I think that's been one of the most important things for me, having moved to Chicago, knowing no one. I think that's what really drew me here. When I attended Admitted Student Day last year, I went to the Minorities in Public Policy Mixer, and I really just enjoyed meeting people who were going to be in my cohort. And that has proved to be true. I think that my friends that I have from Minorities in Public Policy, which we call MIPS, are some of my closest friends I've made here. And they're definitely going to be friends for life. I love my community here. I really enjoy the MIPS mixers. We do a lot of networking with MIPS and MIPS alums. Like I said, Melissa from the IOP, she was a former MIPS president, so that's actually how I met her. And I think everyone at Harris feels the sense of community and kind of tries to look out for each other in that way. So that has also helped. I've had friends in MIPS who have helped me look for internships or connected me with places that they have formerly interned with. So I think the community I've built here is really based a lot on that, and also on my work. I've become really close to Nora and Jordyn, who are here obviously, and all the other people we work with. And through classes as well. And we always have group projects in core classes. So that's a great way to meet a lot of people that you wouldn't normally meet because they are randomly assigned, and our cohorts are pretty large. So that gets you kind of out of your comfort zone, out of the people that you are already friends with, and has really allowed us to kind of all know each other in a way, even though our cohort's pretty large, and made it feel like a smaller community, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not difficult to meet people on campus and to kind of make friends. I'm part of a couple of Harris student organizations that have been helpful with that, including the Center for Effective Government, which tries to you know, make sure or tries to address government deficiencies and polarization. But you know, really a lot of it is just like Sabrina said, is kind of, you know, you're in your core classes with these people. You naturally are kind of leaning on other people to help you get through you know, some of the difficult quantitative things. And, you know, when I came in, the second year student told me that there are going to be weeks where you kind of understand things and that you are, you know, the one who's helping someone else. And there's going to be weeks where you don't understand things and they're the ones who are helping you. And that process is, it's really easy to kind of build relationships quickly, because there is kind of an element where, you know, you really are relying on your friends in order to help you get through this. And that kind of really builds a bond and a sense of community. And so, you know, when you're walking around Harris, you're going to see, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40 faces that, you know, like, you know, even just like a walk from one side of the building to the other side of the building, everyone is super friendly. You know, everyone is really interested in, you don't come to Harris if you're not interested in kind of making the world a better place in some way. And that really shows in terms of what people's interests are. And, you know, the policy discussions from the classrooms spill over into the forums, spill over to when you're grabbing beers at the pub, you know, later at night. And so I think that it's, you know, there are some dedicated, you know, Harris student organizations and activities to help people build community, but a lot of it is just going to happen organically, just from the classes that you have with people. And you know, especially with the international student population, having these students come from all over the world has been really, you know, a rewarding experience to see this kind of diversity of perspective that's reflected in Harris, in the Harris student body.
I am just going to echo again with it's hard to go after Sabrina and Jordyn because I'm friends with them, so we all kind of think similarly, and also they say good things. But I want to echo what they said about just like making a really diverse group of friends at Harris. I definitely, there's programs called like Jumpstart and Math Camp to kick off the first quarter before the core, that helped me really like help me meet people who also maybe weren't as good at math, which was nice to have as an ally in this. And then I also really want to highlight all of the different good student groups that exist at Harris. So I am on the board for Harris Community Action, which is a really cool student group that it partners Harris students with organizations on the south and west side of Chicago to do kind of a 10-week nonprofit consulting sort of project for them. So we work with nonprofits that might need a little extra lift and just provide this like free service of Harris students who are really good at sort of data or logic modeling and that sort of thing. And it's a really nice way to partner with the community and also to kind of use your own skills that you're learning at Harris out in the real world. And then I also am on the social committee, which is what I really care about. I love school, but also I really care about having fun. And so I love being on the social committee because we get to plan really good events like Harris. We were supposed to have a really good Harris after hours this Friday that I'm so sad isn't going to happen. But it was going to be at this off-site place called Mars Brewery. It's a really sweet little small brewery nearby. And then I also just joined the board of Women in Public Policy, or WIP, which is a really cool organization that it kind of just provides events for the whole Harris and UChicago community that are focused on women in public policy and making connections for women who work in public policy. So I also just wanted to make sure I highlighted the student organizations that you can get involved in. I know that Sabrina and Jordyn are both involved in some too.
Awesome, thank you. It sounds like you all are juggling a lot. So kudos to you again. Thank you for joining us today. Can you all briefly speak or kind of talk about working? Do any of you all, work? And if so, how are you able to secure those roles? I know a lot of times I will get questions about like, I want to work. I don't feel right just going to school and not working. So if you all are working, can you, describe how you've been able to juggle those responsibilities in addition to being involved in the community and handling your academics?
Sure. So this is Sabrina. I love talking about working because I think that working at Harris and just around Chicago in general has been a really great experience for me. And like I said before, I've met a lot of great people that way. So I am a current grad assistant in the admissions office with all of these wonderful people, and I've loved that. And for me, I chose that because I wanted a work experience that would kind of get my mind off of school. So I know a lot of people like to be a research assistant or teaching assistant, but I really knew I wanted something that would use a completely different part of my brain. And I've really gotten that from this experience, and I love that. And also, on the fun side, I do dog walking and pet sitting, which I've also loved doing in Chicago. And also, I was supposed to do this in this spring quarter, but now that we're not on campus, I'll be doing this in the fall. But I am a fellows ambassador for the Institute of Politics. So I'm really excited about that opportunity because at the Institute of Politics, they bring in these wonderful fellows who are experts in their fields about numerous variety of things. Like recently in the winter quarter, there was Abdul Al-Said, who has been very vocal about all the COVID-19 things. He was the Michigan director of the health department for a while, and ran for governor of Michigan in 2018, I believe. So that was really great to be able to talk to him. And then I was really excited to be able to support a fellow, and we're randomly assigned to them. So I'm excited for that job opportunity in the fall as well.
Yeah, Abdul was awesome. He was a really good fellow at IOP. So yeah, I have a few positions. So I work, obviously for the admissions office on Team Harris. And I, help out for probably about 10 hours a week for them doing various duties. And kind of like Sabrina, I was looking for a position that kind of was not something where I was going to be academic focused, partially because I have other things, lined up to fulfill that side of things. I also work for a nonprofit for a few hours a week, Healthy Schools Campaign, and I do some writing for them. And I also do some consulting and writing for a couple of small tech companies in Chicago. And I have a background in being doing some freelance journalism, and so I kind of leverage that to kind of get some other positions. I would say it's totally doable to work, but just, kind of be careful, especially in your first quarter, and don't overload yourself. I know some people who, were working about 25 hours a week their first quarter, and I think they really missed out on a lot of experiences that campus had to offer, and they were really just kind of working, coming to school, working, coming to school. And I hardly ever saw some of those people. And so I would say that you can definitely work. And actually, I think that working is a really good thing, both in terms of bringing in money, but also to open yourself up to different experiences around the city of Chicago. And you don't have to even wait for an internship. I would say that if you're interested in that, go out and see what's in, a field that you're interested in, and see if you can, figure out a way to work someplace that you're interested in for a few hours a week, or if you have some, experience from your background that you can leverage into a part-time job somewhere. I would say try to do that as well. I was able to kind of cobble together something. And so now I am probably working, between 15 and 20 hours a week now, which is more manageable because I'm out of the core. But it's totally doable to work, anywhere between 10 and 15 hours a week while you're in the core, and just make a little extra money on the side.
Yes, I'm going to third what has been said, but I also am a GA at the admissions office, which is the best. And I love working. I mean, I come from a background similar to Jordyn, where I was working all the time. And so coming to school, definitely classes keep me busy, but I like having a time of day when I am doing tasks and helping other people make things happen. And I love that. And I get to have a little time with the admissions team, which is really fun too. So I work about 10 to 15 hours a week. I also want to second what Jordyn said. I think I have a few friends who worked 20 to 30 hours on top of school. And I think for some of them, it was really a necessity, but I also just grad school is a luxury. So I want to name that. But if you can afford to work between 10 to 15 hours, I think that's probably about as many as you should try to work. It's really hard to get to do the sort of things that you came to grad school to do, or at least for me, what I came to grad school to do, which was go to events and hear speakers and make sure that I was really doing my reading for class and diving into that sort of stuff. And I think working is so important, and for some it's just a necessity. So I don't want to make it sound like you shouldn't work, but I do think if you can afford it, or if you are considering what kind of loans to take out, that's something that should be considered. And then I just also want to second what Sabrina said. The Institute of Politics was not really on my radar when I came to Harris at first, and I feel I slowly have grown to be oh my gosh, the IOP is one of the best assets we have. And the fellows program is so cool. I had a friend who was a fellow this last quarter, and you basically just are like the staff assistant for this really high profile, cool person who wants to be involved with students. And from that, you get really good connections and you get to really like be involved in these really cool settings and moments that are really unique to that position. And I think also Pete Buttigieg was supposed to be one of the fellows this quarter. So I hope Sabrina, when she does it next quarter, gets to be with a really cool fellow. I'm sure she will.
He was. I was so disappointed to hear that he was not coming in. And just to pivot off what Nora was saying too, is that IOP also has a lot of opportunities for like mid-year internships. And IOP actually is able to fund a lot of those, where some other positions that you might look at for mid-year internships might not be funded. IOP can basically, provide you a stipend to do internships around the city of Chicago. So that can be another way to bring in money.
Great, thank you. Like I said, I know that's always very top of mind for individuals when they're coming into grad school. As just a quick follow-up, you all have mentioned that the IOP has a lot of, different positions, but can you talk a little bit more about how common it is for individuals to hold TA, GA, or even RA positions? And is that exclusive to Harris, or are they able to go off campus or maybe even to other grad divisions or the college and hold positions?
Sure, I can address that a bit. So often what I tell students when they're asking about student worker roles like that is I honestly don't know a single person at Harris in our cohort who has been looking for a work opportunity, like 10, 15-hour commitment on campus and has not found something. So I think it's super common if you want to do it. I think the best way that a lot of people have found RA positions is directly speaking with professors and being like, hey, I'm really interested in your work. I would love to help you out with this. I know a few people who have gotten RA positions that way. And then I have a lot of friends who have TA'd for classes outside of Harris as well, and then in Harris as well. So you can TA for the college or SSA. And I know in our Harris headlines newsletters that we often get notifications of TA and RA positions at other places on campus. And also a main way that Harris students are involved in RA positions is through research institutes like the Behavioral Insights and Parenting Lab, BIPS. Yeah, I think it's that. I know a lot of people who have done that and have had great experience that way as well.
I think Sabrina, pretty much answered pretty much everything. The only thing I would say is if you're interested in an RA position, that's not something that is, I think anyone can get a TA position if they want. And I'm not saying you can't get an RA position if you want. You just might not be able to get the exact RA position that you want with the professor that you want. That said, I would say be proactive, especially early on. If you're interested in working with a specific professor, if you're interested in doing research for somebody, go to them a little bit earlier on, or figure out a way that you can have a connection to go to them. Again, like if you want to be a TA, you can definitely be a TA. I think that there are some requirements in terms of that you had to have gotten a certain grade in the class in order to get that position. But yeah, it's very common for people to be TAs, RAs, and have other jobs on campus.
Yeah, this is Nora. Sabrina and Jordyn covered it all. I just also want to second that I don't have any friends who are looking for employment that don't have it. So I think there are plenty of opportunities around Harris.
Perfect, thanks. Well, now we'll go ahead and open this time up to the audience. I'm sure they have a lot of questions for you all. My colleague Andy is on the session with us and she will begin taking questions. Thanks.
Thank you all for submitting your questions. And going back to the beginning of the conversation, all panelists talk a lot about the quantitative skills and Harris's data-driven evidence base. Can any of you give a specific example of how you actually use data in the classroom, in policy, or in some of the applied experiences that you've talked about?
Sure. So I'm not positive I'm the best one to address this at the moment. I think I mentioned earlier that the data skills that I have received have been great to talk about in interviews and in cover letters. But beyond that, I have not practically applied many yet, just because we were just in the core in back-to-back quarters. So I haven't really had any opportunity to do so. I'm not sure if maybe Jordyn or Nora can answer that better.
I don't, again, because we're all first years and we just came out of the core, we just came from a class where we were working with data to be able to run regressions on it. And I think all three of us maybe are taking program evaluation next quarter. And I think that's where we're going to do a little bit more of some of the applied data skills. You basically kind of have to, learn how to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And we just learned how to crawl, maybe walk. And so we're still kind of moving on to that next stage. And so I don't think any of us have the kind of background where we would have been applying that. Hopefully this summer, we're going to be able to apply some of those skills. That said, when you're in statistics for data analysis too, you are given these data sets, and they are cleaned data sets because, we're not working with kind of the complexities of real world data yet. And again, I think the program eval is going to help with some of that. But, you're looking at things like, we had one assignment where we had to look at what are the effects of a border wall on car theft in Israel, and for settlements that were, or villages that were close to the border wall, or villages that were far from the border wall. We did another regression where we were looking at, what is the effect of like acidity on, wine quality, or different factors on wine quality. And so, it's, again, you're working with these data sets that you're provided in the core, but it really is cool to be able to run these regressions on these, run these analyses on them, and then be able to come away with some sort of conclusion about what the data says one way or the other. And a lot of those data sets are based, not the wine one, but something like the border wall one, are based off of real world studies or real world experiments of some sort. And so you are kind of replicating real world studies that went on, and that can be a very rewarding experience, especially when you come to the same conclusion that the authors did.
Yeah, and I would say that I also haven't been like applying my own data skills yet, but I do want to just shout out one of the ways that I saw data really used in a cool way at Harris is the Center for Municipal Finance, which is the Mike Belsky, the guy who helped me get my summer internship also. He runs the center, and they put on a few different lunch and learns throughout the year. And one that I went to was a 3-day series with a man named Cameron Mock, who is now one of the chief budget directors for the governor of Illinois, Pritzker. But at the time that when he was, the research he was talking about, or the work he'd done that he was talking about, was when he worked for the city and for Chicago Public Schools, and how he helped develop an equity framework for school budgeting. And so he walked us through like the nitty gritty details of how they came to this new funding formula to make sure that schools were getting funding from an equity lens, and how to make sure that they were taking schools that had been like historically underfunded to not fully funded yet, but like still increasing funding through this framework that was really revolutionary to me. And also it was just this 3-day like deep dive into how budgets work, how different funding decisions are made, like exactly how these different formulas were come to and crafted. And I just was so into it because it was the like intersection of the things that I care about and the things that I'm trying to learn more about. And I thought it was just such a unique experience to do this really deep dive into how to see data played out in the real world.
Thank you for providing so many examples of how you're continuing to learn during the core and as a first year. And I think what we've heard from, especially in the MPP program, is your second years where you can really customize or specialize your area of interest through the flexibility of all those electives. Can you talk about what you're thinking of, how you're going to utilize your second year? What electives are you excited about, or how will you leverage all the resources across campus?
Sure. I am super excited about that opportunity. This is Sabrina. I think Jordyn touched on that a bit, saying that we were going to build on our core skills in our classes even this coming quarter. I am also taking program eval, so I'm really excited to, like Jordyn said, we kind of got all those foundational skills and kind of maybe learned how to start walking, and now like we can actually move on and kind of hopefully by the end of this year and next year like run with those skills that we have. So I'm really excited for that. And also I'm planning on taking a few classes at the law school, some environmental law classes, and also on campus there's this really great class that's called Little Red Schoolhouse. And I think Chicago's like well known for this class, and it's a writing class. So I'm also super excited to take that and just to utilize all the other opportunities we have on campus throughout the next year. Because in the core, it can be really overwhelming to learn all this stuff. But beyond that, there are great talks that happen at the business school, at the law school, anywhere on campus. IOP has lots of things like we've mentioned. So I'm just excited to kind of fill my schedule with a lot of like extra learning opportunities that are outside of the classroom.
Similar to what Sabrina was saying, I'm also really excited. Coming from the core, it is very cool, the classes that you get to take, but everyone came here because they have their own policy interests. And the thing I love about the Harris degree is that when you get to the electives, you kind of get to choose what your own path is, and it's very different than the people who you're friends with. And so the certificates can be good kind of guidelines about things you might want to pursue, and you don't kind of have to follow them to a T. I'm going to get a certificate in environmental and energy policy. I'm going to get a certificate in program or policy evaluation. And I'm probably going to take 2 out of the 3 classes for municipal finance. I don't think I'm going to be doing bonds, but we will see. And so those can be really good guidelines, but you don't have to fulfill every requirement there if you want to kind of dabble in something. There are so many cool classes that it is kind of hard to whittle down to the ones that you want to take. And you feel like, oh, this is a 2-year program, and you get out of the core and you're like, oh man, I only have like 12 courses. I have to be very selective about them. There's a negotiations course with John Burroughs that I'm very interested in taking. Never thought I'd be interested in something like that, but being able to kind of sit down at a table and think what other people are thinking, to think about how you should approach, a policy based off of what other people want, and thinking about having a strategy to do that, a formalized strategy. That's something that's really interesting to me. But I am really interested in going to take an energy law course at the law school. I'm trying to explore what Booth has to offer. There's so many different opportunities across the school. And so it's about basically me looking at what exactly do I want to do when I come out of Harris, and what sort of skill sets are employers going to be looking for. And I think, for the things that I want to do, having a firm understanding of data, having an energy and environmental background, and having a little bit of legal background, I think is really going to help me. And so that's what I'm focused on.
Hi, this is Nora. I am also so excited for electives. I feel like I've been like making it for the last 2 quarters to get to this point. So I am taking this upcoming quarter, I'm taking this class called Equity in K-12 Education with a visiting professor who actually is the current interim CEO/president of Noble Network Charter Schools. So that will be fascinating. I'm also taking state and local public finance, which is in line with one of the certificates or a few of the certificates that Jordyn was mentioning. And then I am taking Management Matters, which is that negotiations course that Jordyn was mentioning. I'm not taking program eval. I'm going to take a break from the quant for a quarter. Well, I'll get my quant in with state and local public finance. But I am really excited about Management Matters. The professor is John Burroughs, and I actually met him at my Admitted Students Week day. And he just was like, he's such a character. He has a business background, but he really cares about making his classes really good for students. I talked to him some of the last days that we were in Keller before everything got shut down. And he also, one thing about him is that he has taught this class on Zoom before. And since we're going to be remote, I thought that would be a good way to get some information and be with a professor who's really committed to his craft, even on a virtual platform. And then I'm also hoping to audit a class at SSA, the Social Service Administration School right next door to Harris, that is about urban adolescence, and it's taught by this really well-known professor named Melissa Roderick. So I'm really excited for the electives upcoming for this quarter. And then similar to Jordyn, I have a few like municipal finance certificates that I'm thinking about pursuing. So I'm excited to find other classes in the Harris electives that can fit into those certificates.
Thank you. We are coming close to our time, but we still want to sneak in 2 more questions. The 3 of you have indicated that you 3 have a really good friendship. So we've got a lot of questions kind of about the community. Can you talk about, is it common for students to have had work experience? Is there a lot of international students? Where are the people coming from? And how easy or difficult is it to find community at Harris?
Sure. So this is Sabrina. I love talking about this question. because I always think, especially like Nora and I are pretty good friends, and we always say like, if this were the real world, like if we were not at Harris, we would have never like crossed paths. We're just on like such different paths. So I think it's really unique that we're all in this one place and have this community. I think how I made a lot of friends was through Jumpstart, which is the pre-math camp math camp. You have to be invited to it if you have little quantitative experience, which was a great experience for me because I definitely needed to start building those skills early. And then also throughout math camp, a lot of those friendships and a lot of that community was really solidified. It's a great opportunity to, one, brush up on the math skills if you are struggling like I was, and two, just there's a lot of free time to get to know people, and Harris puts on a lot of extra activities during that time. So I always recommend, even if you are coming in with an econ background or a math background and think like you don't need math camp, I always say math camp is such a great place to just meet new people. It's low stress environment, so you're not worried about the core yet, and you can get to know a lot of your cohort. Most people come before welcome week, so there'll be plenty of people in the area to get to know. And I think those programs are one of the best ways to get to know people, and also just all the student organizations and the mixers we have, especially mixers like Harris After Hours, which Nora helps put on through the social committee, which I'm sure she can touch more on. But those opportunities are great as well. And it's just a fun way to kind of unwind, relax with your cohort, get to know new people. And it's all at Harris, which is really nice because it's kind of like a low stress environment to unwind. At the end of the day, you don't have to go anywhere. So those are some ways that I've built my community, and I think they also link the blog post that I talked about some of those ways as well.
Second, everything Sabrina said. I think she did a really good job of covering everything. It's just going to happen. I would say attend events, and definitely math camp. I would say is great just to meet people. It's hard to say. I mean, like, you know, I was on a bus, like I think during welcome week, and I met some of the people who would just end up being like my best friends here. Did not know it at the time, but, you know, now I'm very close friends with, you know, a former school teacher from India, and, you know, a woman who used to work for the State Department. And, you know, I have close friends from, you know, Mexico City and Argentina and Venezuela and Bangladesh. And it's crazy how, you know, several months ago we didn't know each other, and now, you know, we hang out and we're very close, and it feels very natural and organic. I was surprised how quickly it happened, but I think that everyone has had that same experience.
Yeah, I was nervous when I came to Harris because I was like, oh, I'm older. I'm going to be around a bunch of people who are like Sabrina's age. Sorry, Sabrina. And I was so like not sure how that would work out. But similar to what has been said by these wonderful people is that I think having this kind of really common passion for policy and why we're doing the work we're doing has made it really easy to make friends. Sabrina is somebody who I adore and hang out with all the time. We were one of the people, like we were like doing puzzles together when quarantine first started. But we really probably just by like different fields and experience probably wouldn't have been together out in the real world. So it's really a nice place to get to know people who you have really shared passions with, but not necessarily experiences. I also love how international it is. I like meet people and have met people who have such different experiences, but are just so cool, and I get to learn so much about them. I just dropped in the chat, Sabrina and I got to do a Harris Policy Instagram takeover and called ourselves policy influencers for a day. So it's also, we tried really hard to do like what is it like to be at Harris for a day? And I think you can kind of see like all of the different types of people and things from that too. Yeah, I think just a lot of what was already said, but Jumpstart, Math Camp, there are always good opportunities. I also had a really like funny realization when second quarter started where like I got a whole new host of friends because my class schedule changed and different people were in my new classes. So like you just get to meet people through classes too. And it's just a really nice inviting community.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sabrina, Jordyn, and Nora. This is going to conclude the end of the session. If you all are attending with us tomorrow, you will see that we have a number of things happening. We do encourage you to sign up if you have not already signed up. Once again, thank you for joining us today. I really hope that you found these question and answer session very helpful. Although you couldn't be here for our Admitted Student Day, I'm so happy that you were able to join us virtually. I hope you all are staying well and hope to see you at Harris in the fall. Thanks.
Thanks for joining, guys.